So this week I'm at the headquarters of Silence Media, and I'm happy to welcome to the show Ollie Henderson, Business Development Director for the company. So hi Ollie, and thanks for making it onto the show.
Thanks very much for having me.
So I want to start with the basics. So for those who never heard of Silence Media before, when did the company start out, and what is the core idea behind its development?
Well, we founded Silence in 2009, in January 2009, really as a direct result of conversations we were having with labels who were frustrated at the restrictions and lack of accountability, really, with their advertising models. So many of our clients felt they were not able to accurately measure the effectiveness of banner campaigns, and really they weren't using banner campaigns as a result of that. So we agreed. Our opinion was, why pay for something if you're not sure you're getting results from it? So we set about offering the cost per engagement model, or CPE, as a solution for artists who wanted to engage fans with video banner advertising and measure how this resonated with them. So first campaign was with Sony. It was a pan-European campaign for the Kings of Leon, and since then we've worked with a great array of artists and labels, and worked with all of them to make sure we engage their fans in a fair and exciting way, really.
And so you've touched on the cost per engagement model, and what are the benefits of this model, and what does it work best for?
Well, I think it's first of all, it's probably worth saying that traditionally advertisers paid on a 1,000-page model or CPM model when they're paying online. They never really knew whether the advert was actually getting read by their users or consumers online. So cost per engagement is a model which allows advertisers only to pay when people do engage with that ad. So in practice, what that means is a user would roll over an ad, it would count down 3, 2, 1, and only after that 3, 2, 1 countdown, when the ad expands, do the advertiser actually pay. So we actually got a network of publishers that we work with, high quality publishers who serve the cost per engagement campaigns. And the key for us is for our creative teams to take the rich media which we receive from our clients and actually create an engaging model which actually encourages people to engage with the ad.
And that's an interesting point you touched on, the fact that you actually have a 360-degree approach to advertising online, in the sense that you take care both of the creation of the adverts in some cases, but you also have all the contacts with the publishers and you place the ads on their sites. So how did that relationship start out with publishers, and how did you get them on board to the idea of CPE?
Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's important to say that we do manage all aspects of the campaign. So when you buy engagements with Silence, we actually include the creative, the production of the ad serving, the media planning, buying and evaluation. So, from our perspective, that's a really important part of the model and why our relationship with publishers works. I mean, the advantages for advertisers are obvious. They only pay when people actually engage with the ad, but from the publisher's perspective, they know they're going to get high quality content from when we work with them. I mean, we've got a comprehensive network of high quality publishers, and they've got an assurance that all of the ads that they receive and that they're going to be serving on their ad are going to be consistently high quality. So we've got the Silence Media creative team rather than an independent agency actually developing that creative. Now, we're actually looking to achieve the highest possible engagement rates for campaigns, and I mean that's important for two reasons. First of all, we want to make sure that the fans like the ad, but for the knock-on effect of that is that the equivalent CPM which the publishers are receiving is inevitably higher because more people are actually engaging with the content. So we do that through a couple of things. I mean, it's great looking creatives, one of those. Another one is a strong call to action. So, there's various ways of doing that. I mean, a recent example is, the Rolling Stones. They had a DVD out, and we actually provided users an opportunity to see some footage from a classic concert in 1972. So, whether it's a broadsheet, a tabloid, radio stations, whichever gender or location we're actually targeting, the key is that whichever audience we're trying to reach, the content is always relevant to them and entertaining.
What about licenses in terms of, if you're playing a full track? I was looking at the Status Quo advert you did, and you can play like 3 full videos pretty much of the track. Does that entail any need to pay publishers or some sort of license to play those videos, or is it fine because it's advertising?
Well, we always receive the content from the label. So I mean, Status Quo is another good example where he kind of allowed them to see some sort of nostalgic footage of Status Quo in their heyday. I mean, we essentially, when we begin a relationship with an advertiser, and certainly when we're beginning a campaign, we'll ask for all of the creative assets which have been approved by their departments.
So how did you go about developing the technology that is behind both, the banner that you provide for CPE and also the analytics that you provide for the companies? Is that something that is similar to what was already in place, or do you have to create something slightly different to what was the CPM way of doing things?
Well, I mean, I keep saying it, but the most important thing for us is actually making sure users engage, and that really drives a lot of the development we make in terms of the way the ad looks, and to a certain extent some of the technology we're using. I mean, in terms of the ad serving technology, it's very similar to serving an ad based on a CPM campaign, but we actually work with our ad server, for example, on the basis that we're going to drive engagement. So we assume a certain amount of risk from campaigns because we have to guarantee that people engage or we don't get paid. Same with the publishers. Now, in terms of the formats, I mean, we use a standard IAB approved MPU. I mean, what that actually means is that when you go to a website and you see a square ad on the side of the page, that's generally the format we use because we found it's the most effective way of people, or the most effective ad for people to engage with. I mean, interestingly on this, I mean, we find about a third of users who roll over an ad initially actually then roll off. Now, we don't charge for that. We only charge when people either click or count down 3, 2, 1. So it's an interesting example to see that just rolling over an ad doesn't necessarily mean you want to view it. And again, when we're actually looking at the expanded ad, that only expands to double the size of an MPU. And again, we found that when users see intrusive formats on their webpage, it doesn't necessarily endear them to the brand, and that's certainly something we focus on. The last point on this, probably increasingly we're using techniques such as ad groups to drive engagement rates for campaigns. I mean, this effectively means producing multiple creatives and optimizing the campaign based on which of those performs best. So an example is a Ray Davis campaign we recently ran. For that, we actually used 3 different pieces of video content. One with John Bon Jovi in, one with Paloma Faith, and one from Gary Lightbody from Snow Patrol. Campaign's been a great success, and I think that's where what we're doing is actually different from traditional campaigns in the sense that because we're actually guaranteeing engagement, because we're focusing on actually making sure engagement rates are high, we're using the opportunities to use ad groups to actually drive that effect forward.
And we've talked about the concept of CPE, but it would be great to have a real life example of one of the campaigns you ran and go through some figures and understand how effective that is. Also, not only in advertising the product, but also in saving money for the people that are placing the advert with you guys. So, do you have anything that you would like to talk about in terms of campaigns?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think it's important to say as well that it's not necessarily about saving money with CPE because you could spend as much money as you want. I think the key thing is that rather than not knowing where your money's going, you're actually ensuring that the money you're spending is getting people to engage. I mean, a good example is probably with Justin Bieber, probably the highest profile artist, well, anybody could have worked with, over the last year. I mean, we've been working with Universal since last year, both in the UK and Europe. It's very important for us to make sure we're reaching the target audience, which Justin's going to engage with, and that in the UK and in Europe means things like music sites, but also specifically teen sites. In terms of how we create the campaign, we actually looked at using a music video, behind the scenes footage, live footage of performance, and also using calls to action which are relevant to that target audience. So it might be the chance to see an impromptu gig at the Science Museum, it might be behind the scenes footage of the filming of the video, and actually what we did in Spain was provided a personal special message from Justin Bieber to the fans. Now, in terms of a case study, I mean, it's a great case study where an artist has actually, increased his success across Europe, and we don't take all the credit for that, but certainly in terms of looking at the numbers, we saw an engagement rate of about 2.3% across Europe We ran it across 13 different territories simultaneously. Interestingly, probably for the label, was a click-through rate of 24%, so almost a quarter of people actually clicked through to the destination site. And also, the video views. I mean, if you've got a piece of video content, you want people to watch that, and we saw 62% of those people who actually engaged with the ad viewing the whole video. So, from that perspective, it's a great success.
I'm really interested in the analytics part of silence media as well, because you provide some really great data for the people that are placing the adverts in to understand what the demographic is and whether the advert is working and where it's working, where it's not working. So how do you provide this analytics to the companies that advertise with you? And do you actually advise them on what to do with the campaigns, or do you just give them the data and they kind of decide what to do from there?
Well, it varies. I mean, we provide detailed analytics, as you said, of every campaign, and we actually provide that on as frequent a basis as our client requires. So it might be a client wants to keep an eye on that every day, it might be every week, or some clients just want to see the results of the campaign at the end. I mean, the important thing is, because we're monitoring that on a day-to-day basis, we can always optimise it to make sure that if an ad isn't performing in a particular place, we'll just move it and improve the performance elsewhere. Now, we obviously report on the total number of engagements, but also very important to our clients, as I mentioned before, is additional insight we provide post-engagement. So, for example, we look at video view time, dwell time, click-through rates. I mean, on average, we found 60% of those that engage will view the whole video. You get an average dwell time of about 2 minutes. So once that ad's expanded, people are actually engaging with the content for on average 2 minutes. And our average click-through rate is 12%. So it's really it's a very successful way of actually pushing people through to the site. Whether it be the artist site, MySpace, through to social networks, whatever the aim of the campaign is. And the analytics give a really good insight into where the band's audience lies. And for some clients, the great thing about the model is that since you only pay for where it works, it can be used as a market research tool. So an example is with Tired Pony, where the early part of the campaign was used to identify where their audience is. So 4 creatives were used across a range of tabloids and broadsheet sites, and specifically they were designed to gauge where the audience lies. So based on that, we can then optimise future campaigns and targeting to that particular audience.
The past couple of years have been, a bit odd for advertising. Even sites like We7 that operate on an advertising-based model struggle a little bit because of the recession. So did you find that there was any impact on your business of the recession, and do you see an increase in the interest of advertisers into your model in the past few months?
Well, from our point of view, the recession created great opportunities, actually. I mean, inevitably, advertisers had to have a closer eye on where their money was being spent. They had to, see the measurability, the accountability of the advertising money which was being put into campaigns. So, from our point of view, we've done well out of it. I mean, ultimately, cost per engagement is built on the premise that advertisers only pay when people engage with the content. So, from that perspective, there's no wastage. So, undoubtedly, that's contributed towards our growth up to this point, and to be honest, it will probably remain in focus going forward. I think the learnings of the recession will feed into how people develop their advertising strategy for next year and beyond. In terms of the companies that you target to advertise with you, you started out with the music industry, which is naturally a really strong clientele for you. You've expanded into comedy advertising and then some movies. But now you've also started a campaign for Specsavers, for example, which is one of the first sort of high street retailers that you've been working with, I assume. So how does that impact the way you operate? Are you thinking of keeping a focus on the creative industries like the music industry, or do you think that focus may shift to more mainstream retailers as they get interested in the CPE model? Well, clearly the entertainment industries have a huge amount of content which naturally lends itself to video advertising online. So I think in that perspective, the music industry has been pioneering in actually adopting a new model and exploring the possibilities of it. As you said, we work with advertisers within music, obviously TV, film, computer games. But yeah, I mean, certainly brands are investing more and more time in developing the type of entertaining content which means that they can increase their brand awareness online. I mean, good example was a campaign for Relentless energy drinks. Now, they actually were developing a music platform which was looking to increase their brand awareness, and given our understanding of music and how to reach a particular audience, that was a really effective way for them to actually get that content in front of people. And likewise for Specsavers, really. I mean, they created an above the line campaign based on the Mr. Men, and it's visually really interesting. Probably allowed a lot of people to actually reminisce on their childhood, and what they wanted to do was actually get that content in front of people online, and a cost per engagement model actually allows them to do that. And from that perspective, certainly music remains a key part of our business, but I would expect that as the content improves from brands, whether they be retailers, FMCG brands, consumer electronics brands, whatever business and whatever they're selling, as they create great content, then there's the opportunity to actually get people to engage with that online.
And we've been talking about major campaigns for major companies, but where does an independent label sit within the Silence Media environment? And is it possible for them to advertise with you guys? And what is the entry point for an independent label or a smaller retailer?
Well, we've worked with labels of all different sizes. I mean, from Polydor to XL to much smaller independent labels. I mean, we've worked with Badly Drawn Boy recently on a self-release. It doesn't really matter what the size of the label is necessarily, or the size of the artist, whether it's a Justin Bieber, whether it's an artist like the XX, for whom we ran a campaign before Mercury nominations and after Mercury nominations. It really doesn't matter what the objective of the campaign is necessarily, or the size of the artist. What we're in the business of doing is engaging fans, and for a smaller artist, it might be the best possible way of actually engaging their fans. An artist might be played on Radio 1, for example, but not won't necessarily be able to advertise on a site like that. So how do you actually reach those fans? Well, what we provide the opportunity to do is actually target according to a particular demographic or a particular genre of music, and actually get that content in front of people.
Let's talk about mobile. So where does Silence Media stand in terms of mobile? Do you advertise on mobile already? And if so, what are the platforms that you prefer?
We're not actually running any campaigns on mobile at the moment, but obviously the great thing about the online space is the opportunity to develop new formats, and there's always a demand from advertisers, from our clients, to actually do that. So from that perspective, we're always exploring those ways, and we'll be running mobile campaigns from next year.
Yeah. And in that sense, do you think that the iAds platform launched by Apple kind of restricts the way advertisers can publish content on iOS platforms, or do you think that's just a completely separate environment and it doesn't really affect the way you advertise on the web for mobile? Well,
I think, in terms of iAds, I think Apple have definitely set the creative bar in terms of what you can do within that advertising functionality. I don't think we'd necessarily see that as a restriction. I think it's a good opportunity. I think there's lots of different formats, and I suppose from the wider picture, we'd see wherever we need to actually reach an audience in whichever format, whichever device they're using, we'll look to target that. So it might be Android, it might be on a different format, it might be on Windows. Ultimately, if people are going to be engaging with content, we'll actually create campaigns to actually target them in those places.
To conclude, I wanted to know about the future plans for the company. You mentioned something about mobile ads for next year, and what are the other avenues where you plan to expand in the next couple of years?
So yeah, next year is going to be a really exciting year for us. We're going to continue to develop our relationships with record labels, but we're also going to be working with brands in other sectors, whether it be FMCG or consumer electronics. So we can focus on that, the innovation of new formats. We talked about mobile, but we're also developing CP formats for pre and post roll. So yeah, it's been an exciting first couple of years for Silence, but we're always looking forward, and we can't wait to get involved in exciting campaigns next year and beyond that.
That's great. Well, thanks very much for joining me on the show, and look forward to seeing what you're going to do next year.
Thanks very much.